Jason Light talks about Chris Godwin's status heading into 2025, that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It's a mock draft Monday, so we're going to have plenty of draft talk coming up in a little bit. But let's start things off today with Chris Godwin and his recovery process from the ankle injury that ended his season last year. So Bucs general manager Jason Light was on WDAE with T. Kraz late last week and was asked about Godwin's recovery from that injury and the ensuing surgery, which Light said, quote, "I'm feeling very good about it. He's hitting all of his milestones. He's hitting all of his markers. He's where he's supposed to be. We're not going to try to set any records for the fastest rehab because we want to make sure everything's done right and just get him out there for the regular season. Right now, we're taking it week by week. I've said this time and time before, but I would never bet against Chris," end quote. This is obviously good news as it pertains to Chris Godwin and the Buccaneers, and this recovery isn't like the last one that he had to go through. This isn't the repairing or rebuilding of ligaments. This was a bone issue, so now the recovery process is about making sure that that bone is set the proper way, back to full strength, and then building up the muscle to get him back to where he was. Now, maybe a lot of you have encountered this before. Maybe I was just flat out oblivious. I'm one of those lucky people, knock on wood. I've never broken a bone in my life. But I've watched my son now recover from foot surgery and then an ACL surgery. And I had no idea how fast you lose that muscle mass when things like that happen, or how long it takes to build it back up to where it was. Like after my son's foot surgery, it was nearly a year before his calf muscle was back to where it was pre-surgery. Now with his ACL, it's the same thing. That calf, that quad, from not using it for even just a shorter period of time, it basically disintegrates, atrophies. That's the word that I'm looking for. And it takes forever to build that back up. So that's what the focus is right now for Godwin and his rehab. He has to build that muscle mass back up so that he's as strong and as fast as he was before the injury. Now, it's not like I didn't think that the Bucs wouldn't try to keep Godwin or that they wouldn't have made him an offer if he was in danger of missing the beginning of camp or the beginning of the season. They still would have, because it would have been about the long term, not the short term. This is a team that has championship aspirations, and they know how critical Godwin is to reaching those goals. So they would have known it still would have been best for the team to bring him back, even if it meant missing him for the first month or so. I mean, it certainly beats the alternative, which almost became a reality. Jason Light talked about that as well, that the Bucs felt that they nearly lost Godwin in free agency. T. Kraz asked Light if he ever thought that the Bucs would lose him, and Light said, quote, "I did. To be honest with you, I did, and it's not a good feeling. Stopped short of throwing up in my trash can in my office. Chris has meant a lot." Kind of went through the same thing last year with Mike Evans. He's the epitome of a teammate, and I could say the same thing about Mike and Levante too. So we're just so fortunate to have veteran leaders like the three of them. I don't think we'll ever be able to replicate that. He left a lot of money on the table. He valued the culture here, the city, the fans, being able to hopefully retire as a Buccaneer, I think there's some value in that. I said at the press conference that we get a lot of kudos for being loyal to our players, but in this case, in a lot of these cases, he was loyal to us. I'll forever be grateful for the decision he and Mariah made, end quote. Now, it has come out that it was, in fact, the Patriots that were going hard after Godwin. During his interview, Light referred to them as a team that was offering a blank check, and then Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated later confirmed that this was, in fact, the case. Now, last week, I talked about the best free agent signing and the best quarterback in team history being Brady, when an insider wrote in and asked if Baker could overtake him in that category. And one of the reasons that I said Brady is the best is because of the culture that he brought with him that is still emanating today. One of the things that Brady always did, whether it was in Tampa for those 3 years or if it was in New England for the 20 years before he got to Tampa, was that Brady always took less to make sure that the team that he was on could build the best roster possible and compete for championships. Sounds like that example is still a big part of what the Buccaneers are doing. Mike Evans, when he came back, turned down more money from the Rams in order to stay with the Bucs. Now, Godwin does the same to the Patriots. And it was, as Albert Breer called it, as Jason Licht called it, a blank check. The reports were it was, $30 million a year that, Godwin left $20+ million on the table to come back. So I would have to think that when the Bucs made their offer to Godwin, they explained what they were going to do heading into this season, and Chris was fully aware that they were pursuing a top edge rusher. Maybe they told him they were going after Hassan Reddick, maybe not, but that they were focused on ensuring they brought someone in to help get after the quarterback on the defensive side of the ball. That they probably told him they're bringing back Bredesen and Anthony Nelson and Greg Gaines. So he knew what to expect if he took their offer for less money rather than leaving to go to New England in a situation that is pretty much up in the air. They've signed a lot of free agents. They have a new head coach. They appear to have a promising young quarterback, but you really don't know. Not to mention you're going into a division there where you have to face Josh Allen twice a year. Miami is, they're in the mix a little bit, but that the respect that Light shows these guys comes back around in times like these, that he's transparent. And he says, look, I know we can't match the offer that you're getting from that team, but here's what we're doing. Here's what we're trying to build. This is why we can't give you as much money, because we're spending it over here on these other positions as well, because we are trying to win another championship. He keeps them in the loop as to what the vision is so that they know what they're signing up for. He mentioned Evans and Levante, along with Godwin, as being those veteran leaders in the locker room that are so crucial to the success of the team, making sure that they know how important and appreciated they are, sets up moments like these. Now, Evans is set to be a free agent again after the season. So, again, would love to see him get a little bit of an extension here soon, especially since ESPN is already gearing up for him to hit the market after the season and potentially play in a different uniform. While that does seem a little premature to me, we do have the excitement of knowing that we get to go through another receiver contract saga after this season. So that's going to be fun for all of us. In the meantime, though, Jason Licht continues to find ways to keep those all-time greats in Tampa to try and compete for another Lombardi and try to set up yet another boat parade. Taking a look at the latest Buccaneers mock drafts. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, in my case, youth sports, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all your investments, all of your spending, all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets. My beloved Fighting Illini didn't make it out of the first weekend, but as we've narrowed it down to just 16 teams remaining, we've got Duke as the favorite to win the national championship at plus 220, then Florida at plus 430, Auburn at plus 480, Houston at plus 550, and then Tennessee rounding out the top five at plus 1,600. The FanDuel app is super easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for those winnings to show up in my account. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Going through some of the most recent mock drafts, the Bucs are kind of all over the place. Unlike the last time that I did this kind of roundup, there doesn't seem to be a consensus on which player they are going to target. So you start with NFL.com. Draft expert Chad Reuter has the Bucs taking Texas A&M edge rusher Shamar Stewart, who was the athletic freak darling of the combine, where all of his measurables were basically the equivalent of Myles Garrett. That was the hot news there at the combine. But Reuter said, quote, Stewart's lack of production and lack of elite change of direction are concerning when projecting him as a pure edge rusher. However, teams like Tampa Bay, who could use the Texas A&M product as a 5 technique on obvious passing situations, will appreciate his strength and versatility, end quote. Next up, Pete Prisco of CBS Sports, as well as Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports, have the Bucs taking linebacker Jahad Campbell. That's an obvious match. We've already talked about him quite a bit. And then Josh Leiskowitz of Pro Football Focus has the Bucs taking Texas corner Jahdae Barron. I'm not going to lie, as much as you all know I love Benjamin Morrison and would love for the Bucs to take him in the draft, Jahdae Barron is insane. I didn't really think that he would fall to the Bucs on draft night. He probably still doesn't. So I haven't talked about him a ton. Maybe I need to start talking about him a little bit more, but he is really, really impressive. His passer rating, just to give you a little bit of insight into Jahdae Barron, his passer rating allowed when targeted last season was 34.2. Just for a frame of reference, if a quarterback throws the ball away, like just throws it into the dirt, his passer rating is going to be a 39.6. Yeah, Barron is that good. Connor Rogers of NBC Sports has the Bucs taking edge rusher Donovan Ezeraku. Man, that'll get me tongue-tied. Boston College edge rusher Donovan Ezeraku. I absolutely love that pick. But now we come to 3 different mocks that are all very confusing to me. So Pro Football Network's latest mock draft, as well as Ben Standig of The Athletic, both have the Bucs taking South Carolina safety Nick Emenwari. Standig says, quote, the secondary lacks needed quality, especially at cornerback, but safety offers the best options with Barron and Will Johnson off the board. Emenwari is an athletic freak. The 6'3" safety popped at the combine with a 4.38 40-yard time and a 43-inch vertical. who returned 2 of his 4 interceptions last season for touchdowns. Pro Football Network said, quote, after a busy offseason, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers enter the 2025 NFL Draft in a position to target talent rather than focusing solely on needs. Few prospects are as talented as Nick Emenwari, who posted an impressive 10.00 RAS at the NFL Combine. His positional versatility makes him a potential asset in multiple roles on the defense, end quote. For those that don't know what RAS is, it is the raw athletic score. So Math Bomb on Twitter does a breakdown of all the RAS scores from the combine and the pro days of all the incoming draft prospects. I reference it numerous times. I used to reference it all the time when I did my draft profiles over at Bucs Nation. I've referenced it on here. You don't get better than a 10.00. Like, that is a absolute perfect score. So, you know, just for reference, I'll probably reference those again during draft weekend. You know, I'll talk about the RAS scores from players that the Bucs do in fact draft. But, you know, there is a concern. To continue PFN's quote here. However, there is a concern with players like Emenwari, the jack of all trades, master of none dilemma. His ability to play multiple positions could mean he never fully excels at one, but with a strong defensive coach like Todd Bowles, Emenwari's potential could be maximized, end quote. My apologies for cutting that quote off a little early. And then you also have Daniel Harms of the Draft Network selecting Georgia safety Malachi Starks for the Bucs at 19, saying, quote, Malachi Starks is one of the smartest players in this class, and Tampa Bay secondary was a problem last season. He's a versatile safety who can play single high and split field coverage and can also play the nickel role for a defense that isn't afraid to come downhill and defend the run, end quote. This is nothing personal against Starks or Emenwari. I just really hate the idea of the Bucs taking a safety at 19. I think this is a position where you can get a starting caliber player late on day 2, even into day 3. And so I don't really love the idea of the Bucs burning their first round pick on the safety position. Now, with that said, if this is a situation where the Bucs trade back, they get an extra day 2, maybe also an extra day 3 pick to slide to the end of the first, 28, 29, 30, 31, somewhere in there. And then one of these guys happens to fall in their lap that late, I'm all about it. Because now you've added additional draft capital on at least one of the 2 days when you're already missing your 6th round pick. So, to me, that trade-off is a little more worth it. With the limited amount of picks that the Bucs have right now, and safety to me not being nearly as glaring of a need as linebacker or corner or even still edge rusher at this stage, like, I get it. The Bucs have set themselves up that they have starters across the board if they don't draft these guys, so they can draft for talent and not positional need. But I think there will be other players sitting there for them at 19 where safety would not be the smarter of the selections. So if the Bucs were going to take a safety in the first, my preference would be Emenwari over Starks, but both are really, really impressive players. Again, this is nothing personal against them. Emenwari is an athletic freak and most definitely falls into the category of ball hawk, which we've talked about Bowles wanting more of on this defense. And according to the mock draft database, Jahad Campbell is the player most often being selected for the Bucs at 19, followed by James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker. That said, Campbell is only being selected in 16.6% of mock drafts for the Bucs. So things are kind of all over the place for them right now, which is another reason that I am team trade down. Because of that, I'm going to be doing my first mock draft with trades. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a mock draft edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And just to be clear, I'm not going to get trade crazy. Really, the only trade that I am going to make in this mock is trading back in the first round in order to get some more picks and see what we can come away with as far as this class is concerned. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So at 19, my options were James Pierce Jr., Jahad Campbell, Jahdae Barron, Matthew Golden, Nick Scourton. I got some decent options here. I can go quite a few different ways. Now, as far as the trades are concerned, San Francisco offered me picks 43, 75, 100, and a second round pick next year for picks 19 and 235. Arizona offered picks 47, 78, 115, then a second and a third for next year for picks 19 and 235. And then the Chargers are offering me picks 22 and 125. Now, the Niners offer is really intriguing because of all of those top 100 picks. However, my first pick wouldn't be until 43. And I just don't feel like I'm in a situation where I can drop 24 picks in the draft and still be able to accomplish what I want to. So I'm just going to fall back to 3 spots. I'm going to make the trade with the Chargers and pick up that extra 4th rounder from them. So the Chargers traded up to take Jahdae Barron, which was a little bit of a bummer. I was hoping he would slide to me at 22. But obviously when you're making that trade, you're making it for somebody. Barron, to me, was probably the best player available. But now at 22, I can still get Jahad Campbell, who to me was, he and Barron are like neck and neck for best player available at 19. I drop back a couple of picks. I pick up an additional 4th rounder. I still get Jahad Campbell. Now, had I not restricted myself to just one trade, the Chiefs had offered me picks 31 and 62 plus a pick next year for pick 22. I absolutely would have taken that deal, and I would have fallen back 9 more picks to pick up that additional 2nd rounder to go with my additional 4th rounder that I got from the Chargers. But I said I was only going to trade back in the 1st round one time. That's what I did. We pick up a 4th rounder. Let's keep it moving. Round 2, some options here for me. TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle from South Carolina. Braden Swinson, the edge from LSU. Darian Porter is there. Kyle Kennard is there. I could get a little crazy and go with Isaiah Bond, the wide receiver from Texas, but I'm going with Porter here. He's the last of the corners available that I really like that can start on day one. I like his size. I like his fit. He's the end of a tier for me. And that tier break is big enough that I want to take him here in the 2nd round. 3rd round, Chris Paul Jr. falls to me here, the linebacker from Ole Miss. But we already took Jahad Campbell. I'm going to pass on Chris Paul Jr. Kennard fell all the way to me here in the 3rd round as well. Darius Alexander is there. But Andrew Makuba is here, and I absolutely love that fit for the Buccaneers. He's a safety from Texas, 5 interceptions, 6 pass breakups last year. He really came into his own after leaving Clemson, going to play for the Longhorns. I love this fit in the defense, and this is what I was talking about in the previous segment. You can get Emin Wari, you can get Malachi Starks, but I was patient. I get a starting linebacker in the 1st. I get a corner in the 2nd. Now I have a starting caliber safety fall right into my lap, in the 3rd round. I absolutely love that. Round 4, here's where we get the 2 picks really close to one another, thanks to that trade. So we have picks 121 and 125. At 121, I'm going offense, and I'm taking Maryland receiver Ty Felton. He's not quite as big as the Bucs' main 3 receivers, but this is the athletic speedster that can be the missing piece to take the top off the defense on a regular basis. He's a great fit as a deep threat and a 4th option for Baker Mayfield in the offense. Really, really like this fit. And honestly, I'm probably not making this pick if I didn't get pick 125 at well. So at 125, I'm looking back to the defensive side of the ball, and I'm looking to the trenches. This is a great defensive tackle class. I really like Joshua Farmer from Florida State. You have Howard Cross from Notre Dame sitting there. Those are the 2 guys that I really have my eye on. But when it comes to the Bucs and their style, their defensive line rotation, as much as it pains me to say it, Farmer is the better fit for the Bucs defense. He's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit stronger. incredibly athletic. He is going to be a seamless fit into this defensive line rotation. So Joshua Farmer, the Florida State Seminole, is my pick right here. 157, the 5th round. That's our next selection. And for some reason, Jack Sawyer is still hanging out at this stage. He's a little smaller for an edge rusher, but can come along as part of the rotation with Reddick, Yaya, Braswell, Nelson. He is, a takeaway machine. Really has perfected that peanut punch, that strip, the scoop and score is a big part of what he can do. And he's really, really quick. Again, in the 5th round, absolute crazy value here to be able to get Buckeye edge rusher Jack Sawyer. And then finally at 235, you guys know here we're looking for potential. We're looking for high ceiling. We're looking for special teams contributions. So there's BJ Adams, the corner from UCF, Phil Maffa, the running back from Clemson, Johnny Walker, the edge rusher from Missouri. But the name that jumped out to me here was Trevor Etienne. The Bucs only had 3 running backs last year. They still only have 3 right now. Etienne was really explosive at Georgia. He's not the tackle-breaking machine that Bucky Irving is, but we're talking about a guy coming in to be the RB4 and probably be on kick return duty as a rookie. He is a guy that can step in case of injury. He's a really good pass-catching back. I love everything about this fit, especially in the 7th round. Adding him to the Bucs running back room at pick 235, he's not going to come in and jeopardize anyone's job, but you're also going to have a guy now that would have a full year under his belt, probably going to be able to have some opportunity on the offensive side of the ball. In addition to the special teams, he's going to know the system and can step in when Rachaad White inevitably leaves in free agency after the year. So trading back 3 spots, picking up an extra 4th round pick, our draft haul is linebacker Jahad Campbell, cornerback Darian Porter, safety Andrew Makuba, wide receiver Ty Felton, defensive tackle Joshua Farmer, edge rusher Jack Sawyer, and running back Trevor Etienne. Let me know what you think of this draft haul in the comments section. Insiders, you can text me what you think of it. If you guys would like this particular class, but that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back tomorrow. Until then, please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can become a Locked On Bucs insider. Just go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.